Do technocrats dream of electric people? We see today a great deal of transhumanism taking the fore within policy and within general intellectual and academic thought, as pushed by the so-called elites, which is rather laughable. However, we see Schwab and Harari, the two sort of main proponents, the main intellectual juggernauts of this idea of transhumanism. Harari calls it dataism. This idea as well, even going beyond the sort of cyborg or robotic notions of transhumanism. Harari discusses the idea of inorganic transhumanism, inorganic intelligence. In essence, inorganic is merely the sort of rehashing of the hermetic immateriality, that which they use to describe the essence of God, the immaterial essence. So therefore, what Harari is stating here is that we transcend the physical. Again, it's, as I've stated since the beginning, it's all to do with the mystery religion that they follow. Primarily, this is very much akin to Kabbalism, but it's certainly Kabbalism, and what they preach right now is very much tied in with this entire web that we can generally call the mystery religions. However, yes, this idea of transcending to God or above God is entirely the eschatological goal of this mystery religion. It is very much in the same vein as the Tower of Babel, this idea of ascending to the heavens. Again, transcending transhumanism, inorganic, transcending beyond the organic. We see as well this idea of doing away with carbon. Harari, in an interview, I'll include it here, he discusses we need to do away with the organic and become inorganic. We have to do away with carbon and become silicon. We have to change the mind, the brain, into a computer. I found it very strange where he stated, we have to get rid of carbon and become silicon. So again, this brings to the fore their desire to literally remake the entirety of the world, of humanity, to remake it in their own image. Pure disobedience against the creation and creator. Again, the Luciferian or Promethean concept, Rudolf Steiner stated it as such when he described the Ahrimanic concept of Ahriman, and the return of Ahriman, that which would anchor us to the material world. Obviously, they wish to anchor us to the material world through temptation into godhood, into the inorganic, the immaterial, which will never occur. What they really wish for are truly electric people, if you will. People that are merely binary sort of pulsations. I've used this phraseology before, but again, nothing changes with these individuals. It's the same old recurrent themes. It's stated by Dr. Timothy Leary. You probably remember him from the individual who coined the phrase turn on, tune in, drop out. He was actually involved in the 1950s experimentation with psychotropic drugs, headed by Huxley. He was in Huxley's cohort, if you will. So, in his book on that psychedelic drug project, 50s, called Flashback, Leary quoted Huxley. He stated, quote, "These brain drugs, mass-produced in the laboratories, will bring about vast changes in society. This will happen with or without you or me. All we can do is spread the word. The obstacle to this evolution," again, here's this idea of evolving, transcendent, continues on, Timothy, "is the Bible. So the obstacle to this evolution, Timothy, is the Bible." Unquote. Leary then added, quote, We had run up against the Judeo-Christian commitment to one God, one religion, one reality that has cursed Europe for centuries, and America since our founding days. Drugs that open the mind to multiple realities inevitably lead to a polytheistic view of the universe. We sensed that the time for a new humanist religion, very important, I'll get onto that in a minute, based on intelligence, good-natured pluralism, and scientific paganism had arrived, unquote. So this is the same idea as Orwell discussed when he stated, producing a dictatorship, a scientific dictatorship, without tears, producing a painless concentration camp for entire societies so that people will in fact have their liberties taken away from them, but will rather enjoy it because they will be distracted from any desire to rebel by propaganda or brainwashing enhanced by pharmacological methods. And this seems to be the final revolution, as he stated. So this idea of humanism links back to Kabbalah, and it links back to Kabbalah within Renaissance Italy. I discuss this in my new work. It's, again, we can understand humanism is a sort of modern day philosophy, wherein, for example, it has birthed communism and socialism, and this idea that human beings have no transcendent quality inherent within them. They have no soul or spirit, if you will. There is nothing metaphysical. We are purely physical beings, physical constructs. And it is only our mental faculties that provide for us any semblance of intelligence and of personality. Personality itself, in the humanist view, is but sort of electrical impulses, if you will. Obviously, that is the modern day humanist view. The sort of Renaissance humanist view was very much sort of proto-enlightenment value system, in which God was slowly being phased out of the equation within their thinking. So the humanist worldview within the Renaissance, what we can call humanism, was brought about by Cosimo de' Medici of Florence, the famous de' Medici banking family. He was very much a patron of the arts and the sciences, the literary pursuits, liberal arts, all of those, civic studies, what have you, all of those various schools of thought. He was very much interested in those. He was interested in collecting books as well. His library actually later on became the sort of foundational pillars of the Italian National Library, if I recall correctly. Anyway, he sent out several individuals. He sent them out to look for ancient tomes on philosophy, on any sort of mystical teaching, if you will, school of thought. In time, what happened was they came back from the Arabic world, which had still kept the works of Hermes Trismegistus alive, and a lot of other occult works. Those works were brought back to Florence. They were translated, and they were proliferated throughout Europe. That is really what birthed, firstly, alchemy, and secondly, the humanist worldview. This sort of what we would call secularism now. Now, humanism is very much the idea of subtracting the divine or the metaphysical or even the material is a sort of an innate characteristic found within human essence, if you will. So with that alone, that is the sort of foundational pillars we're seeing with Harari and Schwab. It has brought us to this nightmarish turning point, this nightmarish fork in the road between, eternal damnation and the potential to be saved from this nightmare, to wake up from it as a species. So continuing on very slightly, and this will bring us into this idea on Neom, this new city in Saudi Arabia, is Kabbalah and the Kabbalistic works began proliferating around Europe at the time, primarily within northern Italy. It is where the Renaissance began. Again, the Renaissance, the rebirth. We find in Milan, the noble family of Sforza began attachment or alignment with this sort of humanist philosophy. The most ardent proponent of this new humanist ideal or a cult or mystical or Kabbalistic philosophy was Francesco Sforza, condottiero of the Sforza family and of the Duchy of Milan. So he had this idea of, and again this would be echoed and replayed within the idea of the City of the Sun, Tommaso Campanella's City of the Sun, even Thomas More's Utopia. Again, Thomas More coined the term utopia. This is found as well within Plato's Callipolis, the beautiful city. But Francesco Sforza had this idea of Sforzinda, which is in essence the ideal Stadt, or the ideal city. The architect that designed this was Antonio di Pietro Averlino. He was also known as Filaretti. So Filaretti took a lot of inspiration. And I'll show the city plan now. You'll notice the 8-rayed star. Again, the 8-rayed star is zodiacal. It's in essence the 4 seasonal midpoints plus the 2 equinoxes and the 2 solstices. Again, everything they do through planning and such. We even see it within Revelation, the 4 horsemen. Again, the 4 horsemen is the 2 equinoxes plus the 2 solstices. We see a sort of pattern of astrotheology, and it tying in with gematria, numerology, and even the zodiac, as we've mentioned. This is also termed the Star of Remphan. Remphan, etymologically, probably derives from Kevan or Kewan, which is an archaic term found in Levantine and ancient Semitic, ancient Mesopotamian as well. It's another name for Saturn. So the Star of Remphan is really the Star of Saturn. So that's why it's an 8-rayed star. However, we see as well, he took a lot of inspiration from Plato's description of Atlantis within the Timaeus and Critias. However, he had this idea within this ideal city for one of the primary buildings in the House of Vice and Virtue, which was a 10-storey structure with a brothel on the bottom and an academy of learning on the higher levels. So what does that tell us? Well, the reason it's a 10-storey structure is because the Sephirot has 10 Sephirah, 10 vessels, 10 levels if you will. Again, this is the sort of emanations, the aspects, the fractal aspects of God within that radiate out into the physical world. Sort of like a rainbow if you will. Again, the rainbow symbolism is another topic entirely, but that is entirely Kabbalistic as well. It is to sort of showcase or display the new age of unity, if you will, the age of knowledge, of reason. That is, again, found within the Sephiroth, is the Da'at, the point of unity. At the point of unity, this Da'at is 6 Sephirah surrounding it. If you draw a line between each Sephirah, you get the Star of David. Again, the Star of David is 2 triangles, the male and the female, joined together. The Freemasonry ensign is very similar in that regard to the male and female aspect coalescing, and in the middle between them both is God, is the 7th letter, is the point of unity. Again, we see in the menorah as well, you have 3 on either side, well typically 3, and in the middle you have the 7th point, which joins both sides. So again, this is sort of speaking to this idea of not just androgyny and divine androgyny, but this idea of humanity itself is, or is destined to be, godlike in their thinking. Of course, this never works out, as my book will detail. Atlantis, the Tower of Babel, these are all cautionary tales. They're potentially histories we honestly don't quite know. History itself is very much revised, rewritten, and obfuscated. The truth of it is obfuscated. Why does, in this house of vice and virtue of Filaretti, the architect of this ideal city, why does he have a brothel on the bottom and an academy of learning on the higher levels? Well, again, this ties into Sabbateanism, which Gershom Scholem stated was but an offshoot, 17th century offshoot of Kabbalah. What was the main sort of motto, modus operandi, of Sabbateans? It was redemption through sin. Again as well, we have this idea within the Eleusinian mysteries and all of these various mystery schools, Freemasonry for example. One is descended into death, into darkness. The Masonry ritual, initiation ritual, you're literally lying in a coffin. You chap on the door of the lodge, and you state to the lodge master that you seek illumination because you are in a darkness. It was a similar thing within the Eleusinian mysteries. I suspect as well, by the way, it was a similar thing within the mystery religions of ancient Egypt, for example, the rites of the Hierophant and what have you. I really do suspect it was very similar in vein. But again, you descend forth into death to ascend up into light, into life. You're reborn. It's a renaissance. So just on the sort of linguistic tie-ins and the symbology, I hope you're starting to see what this is all about. So we can see right away that Filaretti was clearly influenced by the Kabbalah. By inference, we can state that Francesco Sforza probably chose Averellino or Filaretti because he was well versed in Kabbalah. He was well versed in the sort of foundation, the intellectual foundation of humanism at the time. So therefore, as he states here, you have to go through all that sin to then reach the higher levels. You have to degrade yourself, then reach the higher levels. So it puts into sort of perspective the logic behind the elites, their ruling classes' escapades. When, for example, in the Mothers of Darkness castle, on their human hunts and what have you, and Epstein Island and things such as that. Again, it's redemption through sin. You have to degrade yourself, bring yourself down to the bottom, sort of bottomless pit, if you will, to then ascend into light, into illumination. This is their thinking. And this type of thinking, this mystery religion, broadly speaking, has been the sort of guiding, driving factor of this entire conspiracy, as we've seen it within the West and also further afield. It's to the point now where it literally, its tentacles have infected every facet of the world, especially the human government. It entirely controls it, and this is why we're seeing this madness at play right now. This pure, unbridled pursuit. That which is not only impossible, but it is absolutely antithetical to the survival of the species. But these individuals do not care for that. I mean, it even translates into modern religions, modern Abrahamic religions. For example, the Baha'i faith. They have this eschatological view as well of the New World Order, actually, or the world order of Baha'u'llah, the prophet of Baha'i faith, he states, quote, this is Shoghi Effendi discussing, it's a Baha'i author, he's discussing this eschatological worldview of the Baha'i faith, this New World Order. Quote, the unity of the human race is envisaged by Baha'u'llah. Again, the unity of the human race, think of the internet of bodies, the internet of things. As Harari states, this new theology of dataism continues on, implies the establishment of a world commonwealth in which all nations, races, creeds and classes are closely and permanently united, and in which the autonomy of its state members and the personal freedom and initiative of the individuals that compose them are definitely and completely safeguarded. This commonwealth must, as far as we can visualize it, consist of a world legislator whose members will, as the trustees of the whole of mankind, ultimately control the entire resources of all the component nations, and will enact such laws as shall be required to regulate the life, satisfy the needs, and adjust the relationships of all races and peoples. A world executive, backed by an international forces capitalised there, will carry out the decisions arrived at and apply the laws enacted by the world legislator, and will safeguard the organic unity of the whole Commonwealth. A world tribunal will adjudicate and deliver its compulsory and final verdict in all and any disputes that may arise between the various elements constituting this universal system, unquote. Again, this is going back to this idea of the Golden Age, but touching back upon this idea of the ideal Stadt or ideal city. Of course, we have Neom. So I have some notes on Neom. I'll probably make this into a separate video, and it's also in my book as well. But just on the point of the line, that this idea that Neom will be built in the shape of a line, which is obviously absolutely insane, impractical, and downright stupid for several reasons. But urban planning aside, what is the symbolism behind the line? Well, the reason for the line, its symbolic value, is that the line is entirely an artificial creation of man. It exists really nowhere in nature, and it's there to represent a system that has utterly detached itself from any sense of the natural or biological world, in that it seeks the first principle of life, of matter, of intelligence, of consciousness. It seeks that first principle, not beyond itself, but within itself, that it is the Alpha and Omega, that it disobediently, blasphemously, sacrilegiously states that is a axiomatic truth inherent to the very being of not just the way they look at the world, but to the way they behave, act, and carry themselves through their life. Again, it's the beast system, entirely what this is. But as I stated, I'll get into that more within a dedicated video on Neom, because there is a lot to discuss with that topic. I wish to touch upon as well, just very briefly, this idea of the rigid class structure that will exist in this new era. It's very akin to Brave New World. I wouldn't say there is as many classes within this system, but it will be sort of similar, in the same vein, if you will, as Brave New World. So again, you'll have the Epsilons, which are illiterate, menial labourers who, in essence, are semi-morons. Then you go to the Deltas, the Gammas, the Betas, and the Alphas, right at the top. Now, all of these individuals in these various classes are produced artificially. They're not born by means of, should we say, traditional conception. So this brings to the fore this concept of the artificial womb. We already see that now is a fact. It's being created within China. So therefore, we're going to see a very dishevelled world, let's put it that way. A world in which you're going to have children parented by the state directly, to which they will have no parents but the state. You know, I shudder to think what a type of future will actually produce. And put it this way, it won't produce a stable, quote, sustainable system. It certainly will be self-destructive. Just think of the high crime rate and all of these other various social issues caused by single-parent households, fatherless households. Again, that's not to say everyone who's raised by a single parent or lived in a fatherless household is a bad person or is a potential criminal, but statistically speaking. So therefore, really what they're going to engender is a system at the bottom of pure criminality and chaos. Again, that would very much distract the plebs. The plebs are firstly fighting off each other and very much atomized because they suspect the other is a potential criminal or deviant or ne'er-do-well or wastrel or what have you. They're very much going to be disincentivized or unmotivated to pursue rebellion against the apex of the hierarchy. In Manly P. Hall's work, Man, the Grand Symbol of the Mysteries, he discusses this mystery religion or mystery school of thought, conception of androgyny, divine androgyny, if you will, and the Adam Kadmon, and how the Adam Kadmon would be androgynous. It also would be an organic as well. Again, as I've stated within my work in Kabbalah, the Adam Kadmon is exactly what Harari's discussing, Schwab's discussing. This inorganic form of life, intelligence, if you will. And Adam Kadmon is discussed within the Zohar and also other Kabbalistic commentaries is a cause in and of himself. Again, humanism. That all causality is of a purely physical or humanist nature, is not divine. That, in essence, humans are causes in and of themselves. We are potential in and of ourselves. We do not require God to provide for us potential or free will or the immaterial essence that is us. Obviously, humanists do not even believe, even post-humanists don't believe, that we have any immaterial essence to us. We have no spirit. We are non-spiritual beings, they believe. However, digressing, Manly P. Hall states, quote, "This will gradually extend to animals, then to men. Women will bear children without impregnation, and in the 7th round, there will appear men who can reproduce themselves." Again, think of this sort of modern movement within androgyny. He continues on, "The spiritual nature is neither male nor female." This is discussing Adam Kadmon, "but both in perfect balance. The ego is an androgynous entity. Hence, its perfect manifestation must be through an androgynous self-generating body." Self-generating body is very much like autopoiesis, a self-regulating system, if you will. Full automation. But this is entirely what Harari is stating as well. Even Gershom Scholem stated it. Manly P. Hall goes on to state, understanding, again that's capitalised because he's making reference to Bina, or that of understanding the 8th Sephirah, well the 9th if we count Da'at, the hidden Sephirah. So he continues on, understanding is only possible when the positive and negative potentialities, think of the Star of David, the 2 triangles and the Freemasonry symbol, are in equilibrium. Neither the male nor the female can be perfect of itself. So again, this brings to the fore this idea of androgyny. Again, with what happened on that fateful day in 2001, we saw the two skyscrapers fall, and it was replaced by one. So therefore the dualism made way for the unity, the perfection of the equilibrium, as Manly P. Hall states. What Harari and Schwab are wishing to do through technological means, a matrix of control, digital control, is to bring about a global brain, a hive mind, where firstly we can become literally God, we can become that force via our collective intelligence, which is harnessed in their thinking, of course. And furthermore, the elite can then transcend the limitations of the physical world, of life itself. We see in Harari's work, 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, he states, quote, "This could get far worse, as explained in earlier chapters. The rise of AI might eliminate the economic value and political power of most humans. At the same time, improvements in biotechnology might make it possible to translate economic inequality into biological inequality. The super rich will finally have something really worthwhile to do with their stupendous wealth, while hitherto they could buy little more than status symbols. Soon they might be able to buy life itself, if new treatments for extending life and for upgrading physical and cognitive abilities prove to be expensive. Humankind might split into biological castes. Throughout history, the rich and the aristocracy always imagined that they had superior skills to everybody else, which is why they were in control. As far as we can tell, this wasn't true. However, by 2100, the rich might really be more talented, more creative, and more intelligent than the slum dwellers. Once a real gap in ability opens between the rich and the poor, it will become almost impossible to close it. If the rich use their superior abilities to enrich themselves further, and if more money can buy them enhanced bodies and brains, with time the gap will only widen. By 2100, the richest 1% might own not merely most of the world's wealth, but also most of the world's beauty, creativity, and health. The two processes together, bioengineering coupled with the rise of AI, might therefore result in the separation of humankind into a small caste of superhumans and a massive underclass of useless Homo sapiens. Harari also states, and I'll see if I can find the quote, within his work Homo Deus, or again, the God-men, or God-man rather, where he states that Homo sapiens' only task is to facilitate the creation of the Internet of Things. Once that is done, Homo sapiens are to be abolished. Now, how do you abolish 7 billion Homo sapiens? Well, obviously there's various means. I can't discuss those means here, or fear of reprisal on YouTube and mainstream platforms. I'm hoping to upload this video to YouTube, so unfortunately I can't touch upon that subject, but I'm sure you can use your imagination and understand what I'm alluding to. However, we see as well this idea of nanotechnology. Nanotechnology really opens up a sort of brave new frontier, where if we understand that they can be aerosolized, again, follow me here, because I'm going to have to utilize nuance in my speech. If they can be aerosolized and they can be disseminated en masse via some sort of aerial means, then even through intravenous means, then one may conclude that these nanotechnological apparatus may very well facilitate this abolishment of Homo sapiens by one of two means: either direct abolishment, or a sort of assimilation, colonization, if you will, of the life form of Homo sapiens through a sort of forced evolution, forced digital evolution, by all intent and purposes, assimilates the biological vessel that is the Homo sapien. Again, it's speculative, but we have to understand that these individuals are thinking rather outside the box. They're doing something that, whenever it has been tried throughout history, as we see through the various cautionary tales, that which is found in the Bible and also found within the Greco-Roman tradition, for example, Atlantis, we see that it never works out, and the hubris of the ruling class always ends up destroying the civilization. So we have to bear in mind that they understand these cautionary tales. They understand them probably intimately. So therefore, I really do suspect they've had to really think outside the box with this one. Obviously, the technological leaps forward that they have made have been entirely focused, pathologically so, on producing technology that can, again, facilitate this abolishment of Homo sapiens, this forced evolution of Homo sapiens into this new digital binary paradigm. Again, a sort of binate power structure, the haves and the have-nots.